We're rolling.
Welcome to the House Dudes podcast, where we invite you to follow us on our journey towards financial freedom using the power of real estate. I'm Jack Haas.
And I'm Josh Koth. Here at House Dudes, we believe in a couple key principles. Number one, the best way to retain information is by teaching it to others. And number two, a rising tide lifts all boats. We're not competitors, we're a community. So let's get into some real estate investing.
This episode is brought to you by Yellow Letter HQ. Head over to bit.ly/yellowletterhd for fast, affordable, direct-to-seller marketing. Tired of real estate marketing campaigns that don't get results? Yellow Letter HQ is one of the most competitive direct mail campaigns that can save your budget and your sanity. They deliver a fast campaign turnaround that gets your phone ringing. Check out their services at bit.ly/yellowletterhd. Well, we got Gary Boomershine, and a lot of people probably already know who you are, Gary. I appreciate you being on the show, but for those who might not know who you are, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, yeah, Jack, great to be here. I'm super excited. I know we actually got this kind of pulled together kind of quickly for your group. And so for everybody that doesn't know me, my name is Gary Boomershine. I am I've actually got I guess the term is called OG, original gangster in real estate. If you've been through multiple cycles, I guess that's the term. Rafael Vargas actually told me that. I thought that was funny. Who's a big wholesaler out of Florida. But I've been doing real estate a long time. I run a company for what most people know me for realestateinvestor.com. Used to be a company called REI Vault. We're the largest marketer for real estate for both agents and investors all over the country. I think we've mailed out, you and I were talking, I think as I was running the numbers, we're close to 55 million pieces of direct mail that we've mailed out for some of our clients. We got about 1,200 clients, and we do a massive amount of phone, we call them sales ninjas, but it's as the leads come in, being able to actually do the qualifying, screening, and appointment setting. And we've done nearly 3.5 million, almost 4 million seller calls, appointments. And so that's our primary business. But I've been real estate investing since 2004, live in San Francisco Bay Area, and been talking about the real estate cycles for long time. Real estate has been a 7-year cycle, and we've this for 100 years. And this is the longest cycle. And I've been talking about the cycle change of what's coming for probably 3 years. And now obviously we're in the middle of COVID, and here we are. And just for all your loyal listeners, these are some of the biggest transitions in wealth ever. This is really the type of market that we're going into now that many of us investors have been looking for. And so buckle up your seatbelts. We're getting ready for an incredible opportunity for being in this particular real estate market right now and for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. And in fact, I almost want to predict myself that as investors, we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg at this point. I mean, we're still seeing a lot of people who are getting deferred loans, and their unemployment might be starting to dry up and what have you here soon. So we're just possibly just starting to see that type of distressed seller, if you will, in these markets.
Yeah, I run a podcast. I was actually just sharing this with our group last week. You know, a tsunami is coming.
Yeah.
And what happens, it's almost like if you think of a huge tsunami, right, coming, people go out to the beach and the water is going out and there's fish, all over the beach sand. And a lot of people look down saying, oh, look at all the pretty fish on the sand. No, a tsunami is coming, and it's typically a period of time. So we're going to be seeing a massive number of foreclosures. We're going to see, my prediction, and this is all based on market history, is we're going to probably see an initial drop across the board for most markets. We're going to probably see a decrease in value for a period of time, and then probably massive appreciation in values. Why? Because they're printing money in unprecedented amounts. The Federal Reserve, our fiat money system, we've never printed money. And so that becomes a hyperinflationary period. What that means is, regular stuff that we're buying, like milk and eggs, start to go up, but the physical assets is really where we want to be. And so we've been preparing. I think what we've been telling everybody, this is the 3 Ps right now. It's number 1 is protect, number 2 is pivot, and number 3 is profit. And I think that there's an incredible opportunity. A lot of us are doing what's called virtual wholesaling, Jack. That's the market as I see it, especially on the single family side. And there are still plenty of buyers. The market's super hot for that. Virtual wholesaling, a lot of people know what that is, but virtual just means we're able to do it remotely.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of us have adjusted our businesses, and those that are just year to 2 years is going to be the buying opportunity. And so preparing right now for that opportunity that's going to come for most of us.
Mm-hmm. So let's go back to some of the things you've just said there. The virtual wholesaling is something that's always been something that we've dabbled in but haven't really dived into. Can you talk a little bit like how are some people doing this virtual wholesaling? It's especially for newer investors, wholesaling seems to be the low-hanging fruit. The concept of getting a property under contract and just selling paper. And until they do it that first time, it seems like that's when the gateway drug happens, is when they finally get it. Like, oh, now it becomes possible, and you can possibly do it on a consistent basis. How do you do that with a virtual wholesale?
Yeah, it's actually a lot easier than people might think. The main difference, so most wholesaling, we're in a local market. We're working in our small market, typically 250,000, properties in a local market, and we're able to go and meet the seller face to face. The difference virtually is we're most often we're not actually even meeting the seller or the buyer face to face. We're doing it remotely. And in some places, some people are doing it from across other states. We've got a realestateinvestor.com member. These guys have got a 6-figure wholesaling business. They do it out of Vancouver. They live in Canada, and they're working Austin and a couple of markets in Texas completely remotely. They found that it was actually even easier for them to do it remotely. For about 6 months, they moved locally, and then they went back and said, wow, we're making more money doing this remote. It's over the phone, and especially with what's going on with COVID, a lot of sellers, all of us have adjusted to being able to use, Zoom as an example. So a lot of the Zoom meetings are for recording of the properties and property tours. A lot of the buyers, now the cash buyers that we're selling the houses to, they're typically local. So they'll go and typically see the house. It might be virtual, but everything, the closings, the whole thing is remote. And the hardest part of that whole business is probably mindset of just the fact that you can do it. Right. And then number 2 is, it takes some, the interaction with the seller over the phone, it typically is a little bit more numbers of interactions. Like you can go meet with the seller face to face. We're closing the deal at the dining room table a lot faster than we might if we're doing it over the phone. That's what I found. I've been doing the virtual wholesaling kind of model, and that's not my primary business, but I've been doing that for years. And the guy that actually coined it, his name is Chris Chico. You probably have heard of Chris. Super good friend of mine. But he was what's kind of the grandfather of virtual wholesaling. He's in Miami, and he was buying properties wholesaling properties all over the country. So I like, just to stand back, wholesaling is almost like being a general contractor of a property with only a hammer. It's just one strategy. And so I like to look at real estate as 3 buckets: cash now, cash flow, cash later. And virtual wholesaling or wholesaling is typically just cash now. It is really truly a job. It's a single transaction where I'm putting a property under contract with a seller. So I got a signed contract. I find a buyer that's willing to pay a higher price, and then I'm getting an assignment fee. So it is, it's great in this market because there's very little risk. It's more time and a little bit of marketing money because we're having to find those deals. Cash flow are typically rental properties, and I know that you're a huge fan of the rentals, as I am, and doing things like notes, private lending, and then cash later is the long-term holds, right? Of being able to take appreciation and depreciation. And the reason I like virtual wholesaling right now is that there's a lot of uncertainty in the market. There's money to be made. A lot of us are actually doing wholesaling. Just because we don't know exactly where we anticipate we're going to see a drop in prices, at least my group and myself, that we're going to see a small drop in lots of the areas of the country before we see a big increase. So, just being watchful on what we're buying right now. If the fundamentals work, right, and you can afford a second wave of this COVID thing, then by all means, that would be a great thing to go buy. But we're coming out of the euphoric stage of real estate, the tail end of the peak of a market. And as we know, Warren Buffett says, buy low, sell high, right? Don't lose investor money and follow the laws. And so I'm not a big fan right now of just going out and buying, the fix and flip and the rehabbing and the rental properties unless the fundamentals are there.
Sure. So, when you're talking about virtual wholesaling or anybody for that matter, you already mentioned marketing. But I'm going to kind of go about this a little backwards because a lot of people target marketing and try to find those potential sellers. But I think it's probably, in my opinion anyway, and experience, you got to establish that buyer's list first. And you got to find those potential buyers. What have you seen in marketing that's been fruitful in establishing those buyers in those virtual markets? Yeah,
great question. We've done a lot of buyer marketing, and I'll just tell you, for the most part, we're not having to do a lot of buyer marketing. A lot of people have had this philosophy of having this huge buyers list. And what we have found is typically, especially for wholesalers, okay? So you've got different types of buyers. You've got the cash buyers. You've got the retail buyers. You've got the tenant buyers. So a lot of us who are putting either renters or maybe a tenant buyer who's buying with some sort of owner finance or lease option, they're all different channels that we're going to go after. So for cash buyers, we've been servicing, like most of our clients for realestateinvestor.com, I'd say 80% have been in this last 36 months, been very heavily wholesaling. So they're looking for cash buyers. These are investor buyers that are either fix and flip or full rehab, or they're buying for, their rental pool. And they want long-term cash flow holds. And what we have found is that there's two best ways that we've seen that have worked for us and our clients and all the masterminds that I'm in with my peers. One is going out on Facebook and LinkedIn and finding because they're very active. They're out there in the local market. You can pretty much type in, your Salt Lake City real estate investor, and you'll find out pretty quickly, are these a rehabber and what their portfolio is, because they're posting it. Or another avenue has been going out to the realtor list and pulling properties. About a little over 50% of all properties in America, the transactions across the country in single family have been investor purchases, with a large percentage of those listed on the MLS. So going out to those agents and interacting to say, hey, I noticed that you, Mr. Agent, we're working with an investor. Is that investor looking for any more properties? I have a portfolio of properties, and I'm not sure if your buyer is actually looking for more. And we've been finding fantastic cash buyers going through the realtor pool. By the way, those realtors, those cash buyers are typically paying a premium because they've been buying on the MLS, right? The multiple listing service. on listed properties. And so that's been a great source for us from what I've seen. Now, pulling a cash buyers list, you can actually hear there's a cash buyers list, and you can text message them, broadcast by sending a text message. You can actually do ringless voicemail. You can send direct mail postcards. We do all of that for our clients, but very few people use it because it's not really the most effective way that we've seen to go out. And if you're a wholesaler, you don't have to have hundreds of buyers. Like in my market, I'm in 4 markets, but like I'm here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I primarily have 4 investor buyers that I'm flipping properties to. That, and I'm not a huge volume guy, but you don't really need a huge number of buyers. Now, if you're looking for tenant buyers, that's a totally different place. We're finding tenant buyers are usually there's mailing lists that you can typically find. Mailing would be a great way, or text message broadcast for tenant buyers. The best tenant buyers are people that are self-employed because they can't qualify for standard mortgages, right? Or people that have less than stellar credit. That's been a great source for tenant buyers for a long time.
Right. So on the flip side, then let's talk about the marketing to those potential sellers, and what is currently working today. It seems like certain marketing kind of ebbs and flows depending on on people's response. For a while there, we actually saw the response like drop through the floor for our direct mail, but then it kind of started to uptick a little bit again. In fact, I'm getting phone calls on paper marketing material now that I sent like a year ago. Which is, it's kind of, I can't imagine people holding on to a postcard that long, but I guess they do.
Yeah, I got a great story. I mean, we've done direct mail. Direct mail is probably, in terms of scalability, consistency, and it's probably one of the most proven ways to do it. However, most people do it wrong. There is a formula for how to make direct mail work. We were interviewing Scott Oots, who's in California. California is one of the toughest markets for direct mail. He's got a high 6-figure or high 7-figure business. He's crushing it right now in this COVID market, and he has less than 0.5% response rate on his direct mail, but it's still the one that produces. So direct mail is the first thing that's important is it's a cost per deal. So the factor is, what is the cost? How much money do I have to put into direct mail or any kind of marketing to produce enough leads? They're going to turn it into enough good leads that turn into a deal. And knowing that formula, Scott, as an example, averages $70,000 per deal, and he's spending in California $4,200. In some markets, it might be $1,500 to $1,700 in marketing to average a $15,000 profit. So it's the cost in an area like California or Portland or Phoenix, Arizona is going to be higher, but typically the profits per deal are higher as well. So direct mail, outbound text blasting, broadcasting is one. You do have to be very watchful and aware of the FCC requirements because there are laws around that. Ringless voicemail is another one that probably has the bigger issues for ringless voicemail. Is we're pulling a list, we're skip tracing it for phone numbers, and then we're loading it into a system that will actually send out it calls the phone number and it just leaves a voice message, and those have pretty much been the most consistent if you're going direct to the seller. Right. There is online marketing, so the best type of online marketing that I've seen is usually retargeting ads. Once the seller, like trying to buy pay-per-click or do Facebook ads, it's a very competitive market, as I know you're aware.
Yeah.
We love direct mail, but there's there's a way to get direct mail work. I can explain it to your people. The 97% do not come off of the initial phone call. Right. So 3% of the deals will actually come off of the initial call. 90% come after the 6th follow-up. Right. So follow-up meaning, hey, the lead came in and you're continuing to follow up. Somebody's calling them. You're sending out a text message to them. You're sending out an email to them if you've got their email address. 90% come after, and less than 10% of any investor or agent follow up more than twice. Right. So direct mail, to make direct mail work, people give up way too early. I call it 3 feet from gold. So the leads come in off of direct mail. They need to automate an automatic follow-up system that will automatically follow up, and they do need to be phone called. So you have to have what we call an ISA, somebody that's on the phone dialing all day long to get the sellers back on the call. Right? Leads come in, they'll hang up. 30% of all inbound calls coming in off of direct mail are hang-ups. They never actually leave a message, right? Or they get a live voice and they hang up. Those are absolutely gold. But somebody has to call them back. And what we find is the people that do not have success, they're not following up and they're not calling the sellers.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It's interesting you say that because, I've been known, and to my partner's chagrin, because he hears me sometimes doing it, is that I'll even call back the people who call me to tell me to screw off, just to apologize for bothering them. And, I didn't mean to cause an offense or something. And sometimes half of them will go, well, they'll apologize back. And then all of a sudden they know somebody across the street that might be willing to sell me their house. So I've even gotten leads from that. So
yeah, Jack. And so everybody that's hearing this, if you have been struggling with direct mail, this is an absolute gold mine right here. Some of the best leads, some of the absolute best leads are the angry sellers. The people that are nice, that say, I'm not interested in selling, those are good too, but you want to wait for 4 months. So you're it's a not interested. The angry sellers, they're not angry at us for sending them a postcard. They're angry at something that's going on. Many times they're fighting over money in the family. Maybe it's an inherited property or a rental property. Maybe there's illness. Maybe there's divorce going on or money problems, especially right now. I tell the story all the time. One of the biggest deals that I did in single family, a seller, he was a fireman here in Southern California, left me the most atrocious voicemail I've ever had. I mean, it threatened me. And so if anybody that wants to try it, just write what I'm going to tell you. I'll tell you exactly what I said to him. I called him back and he goes, hello. And I said, is this Dwight? And he said, yes. And I said, Dwight, I'm probably the last person on the entire planet you want to hear from. And he said, who? And I said, I'm the guy that sent you the postcard. And I am so sorry, right? I come from a point of humility. And he screamed at me and called me all these different things. And I just kept on apologizing. And that went on for about 4 minutes. And then I asked him, I said, gosh, I have a very reputable company. And I thought you were somebody that might be interested. And I don't know you and you don't know me. How would you have recommended that I introduce myself to you? Should I have actually waited for you to pick up the paper outside? Should I maybe run met you at the supermarket and run my basket into you? Like, what would you recommend? He laughed. And I ended up buying 2 properties and made $241,000. And he apologized to me. But you call in, and those angry callers are some of the best ones. But you call in with a little bit of humility, apologize, ask them, hey, was there anything offensive? Is there I use a marketing company. Is there anything that I can improve? And they're absolute gold mines. Now, the trick is, over time, none of us should be actually doing this phone work. You really should have somebody doing it for you. It's a low cost person. We actually have a team of people that do that for all of us because it's a lot of phone work. It's a lot of phone work. On average, you have to call somebody, to get somebody back on the phone. It's an average of 8 dials. Just imagine having to dial 8 times, multiple days to get somebody on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And a conversion from those people into an appointment is about 1 in 6. So that's 70 phone calls, 70 times dialing the phone to get an appointment. And most people are not willing to sit there and dial 70 times.
Mm-hmm.
It's the most profitable part of our business. Somebody has to do it, though.
So, what did they go through? Let's say they do get a person on the line. Is there a kind of a vetting process to see if they're an actual good fit for the potential investor?
Yeah. We and I would be happy to give this to you for the show notes. We have what we call our Sales Ninja script. And what happened was I brought about 15 of our top clients about 4 years ago. These are guys like Clay Manship, who's got a multi-million-dollar wholesaling.
Yeah, we know
business.
Clay. Yeah.
Yeah. So Clay came in, Steve Carlson, and these are guys that are experts at sales. And I said, guys, let's build the absolute perfect words to the seller. The right words with the icebreaker. It's about a 6-minute interview. So exactly that we could train anybody. Mm-hmm. And so then I actually built a Sales Ninja team. It's a team. We have about 40 people that they do this all day long. We record all the calls in the states that we can record, but it's a script that's about 6 minutes. It starts with, gosh, let's say somebody called on a hang up. The words are, hey, we missed a call from you. Were you calling about a property? Note that you received in the mail or possibly a property that you're considering to sell. And there's 4 answers: yes, no, maybe, or possible referral. We'll say, hey, do you actually have maybe a couple of minutes where I could ask you a few questions about the property? And then I could pass you over to one of our buying specialists who could make you an offer and provide more details about who we are and more about our company. So it's the perfect words all the way down. One of the questions that we ask is the property listed with the realtor? It's one that's missed. A lot of people will go out and see a retail sign in the front yard. And so we'll ask that to bedrooms and bathrooms, and is the property currently occupied? So it's really warming up the seller to find out if there's any motivation to sell, and then we'll work to schedule that as an appointment. And so that's a team. That's a team that I built. It was the biggest hole, by the way, for direct mail that I saw years ago. And finally, I just said, you know what? I'm going to see if I can actually build a world-class phone team. Yeah. Now, I'll tell you another thing. One on building a phone team, because really, if you're going to do direct mail or any of this, somebody has to be dialing the sellers. The money is going to be in the follow-up, and most people, they don't realize it, and that's why they fail. And so I never thought I could build the team overseas. I always thought I needed people here stateside, but it's expensive. And I totally proved myself wrong. So we have the team in the Philippines. It is a strategic weapon for all of us. And I'm going to tell everybody right now something. If you've got somebody overseas, you want to do this on your own, this has worked really well for us. So the seller is on the phone, and often they will say, where are you calling from? And we want them to actually ask that question. And they'll say, where you're calling from. And so our team is trained, and what they say is, I'm actually calling from the Philippines. Gary Boomershine or Jack, or insert your name as our client, hired me in the Philippines so he can pay higher prices for houses. And how am I doing? Is there any feedback that I could give to Mr. Boomershine on how I'm doing? The sellers love it. They love the answer. That's what's called an objection handler, right? The seller came up with an objection, and now we're finding that our stick rate is almost 100%. So the sellers are staying on the phone by asking that. We almost want to, we haven't done this yet, but we almost want to let them know that we're calling from the Philippines, but we haven't done that just to test it out.
No,
So-
that's a great line, and that's.
We've put a lot of effort into providing useful content, and if you found value in the show and have any interest in supporting us with a small donation, head over to patreon.com/housedudes.
And if you have any thoughts or questions, shoot us an email at info@housedudes.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter @housedudes. And if you like what you're hearing, head over to iTunes, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It really helps other investors out there find the show.
And remember, massive positive impact requires
Massive positive action. We'll see you next time. This episode was brought to you by housedudes.com. Do you have time to actively manage flipping and rentals yourself? If so, go for it. If you live in a market that won't cash flow or don't have the time to do all the work, are you just out of luck? If there was a way to participate more passively, would that appeal to you? I'm sure you have questions about how the process works and what to do next. If that's the case, fill out the form on housedudes.com/investors, and we'll reach out to see if you are a good fit for our business. This is first come, first serve, and we will have to stop taking applications when our goals are met. See you at housedudes.com/investors.
I don't like to tell a man what to do with his money, but if you ain't investing in property, then you're dumber than a dummy.
I'm not dumb. I'm smart.
Well, buy property. That's my advice.